Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. So before I get to the news of the day, actually up on ESPN.com right now is a story on the guy I'm going to talk about in a minute, Noah Brown, the receiver that Washington signed on early Wednesday evening. So I'll talk about him in a minute, but a couple bookkeeping or planning nuggets that you need to know. On Friday, I will have a conversation with Brian Mitchell. Really good. We've already recorded. It was really good. Always is with B-Mitch. We talk a lot about like what he has seen from this organization this summer, but the leadership examples he's seen. And as a player, he sees different things than other people do. And then I have another one with Logan Paulson on Monday as we get you ready for the season opener the following Sunday. Also for you Gold members, going to be doing a private Zoom on Thursday night this time, 8 o'clock. We'll go 8 o'clock, go for about a half hour. But I want to do that because I haven't done it in a couple weeks. So 8 o'clock Thursday night for you private Zoom for the Gold members. And then the other club members will listen to it later. And then if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on it, find your level of membership you want, go from there. Anyways, let's get to the news of the day. Enough about that. So the Commanders signed receiver Noah Brown. Now, that was a move that I know a couple of us heard about it earlier in the day as a possibility for Washington. You never know where those things are going to go, but he was a guy of interest because he can add some help at receiver. So he's got some good size. He's 6'2". He's not a burner, but he does play physical. And I think in this offense, that matters. That's something that, it's something that they liked about some other receivers and not about some others. He's, again, not a speed guy. He did play with Terry McLaurin at Ohio State, so there's good. They clearly know each other, and that always helps. But how much, he and Curtis were here together the last couple of years. It's not like they had this great offense because it's really about number 5 and the relationship with number 5, not his relationship with Terry McLaurin or et cetera. So anyways, but I think he's a guy who can help if he stays healthy. And that last part is a big deal for him because that's been a problem for him, and it's why he's no longer in Houston. The Texans signed him to a one-year deal in the offseason with $3 million guaranteed. That's a pretty good sum. That means you're almost assuredly going to keep him on the roster, but it did not mean that for Noah Brown because he missed a lot of time in camp with various injuries, a shoulder injury as well. He missed 7 games last year on IR with injuries, and he ended up on groin, back, shoulder. And then he got placed on IR after the first playoff win over Cleveland, got placed on IR with a shoulder injury. So a lot of concerns there in Houston about him. And it's a shame because he was actually playing well. He had 43 catches his last year in Dallas 2 years ago. And then last year, 33 catches in 10 games. 13, though, came in 2 games. And probably more than 60% of his yards, it's almost like 567, something like that. But in those 2 games where he caught 13 passes, it was like 320 some yards total. So he averaged over 17 yards a catch, but it's kind of inconsistent production. But when they needed him, that's the key. When they needed him, he came through. And that's really what it was. That was his role. He wasn't going there to be some star. He was going there to play a role in special teams. He's a good blocker. And he showed when needed, he could go do that. So the blocking, the physical aspect, I think is a key there. And clearly Dan Quinn knows him, having coached, on the other side of the ball against him in Dallas. That helps too, because the guy, what you're getting. Yes, the injuries are a concern or a factor, but he's not coming here to be some number 2 or number 3 guy, coming here to play a role and be another guy who can play a role for them. They do not have a great receiving core, but I think they have some parts that you can put together, combining it with what I think they have at tight end with Zach Ertz. I think he's looked really good. And in fact, Ertz told me today that this is the best he's felt in a while. And I believe it based on how he looks. I believe it. So, I'll get into that more next week, but he looks really good. So that helps. Austin Eckler helps. I think Brian Robinson's versatility helps. And these guys keep touting Brian Robinson. So it'd be nice to see a coaching staff use him in the run game more than what they did last year. So I think all that can help Jaden Daniels, but they still, they're going to have to piece this together at receiver because you have a lot of parts of guys who can do something. Olamide Zaccheaus can do something. Jameson Crowder can still help a little, in various roles. Pringle, more of a kick returner. What does Luke McCaffrey offer? I think that's going to be a big key for this group because they need him to help to be at least a factor, a little bit of a factor for sure. So some questions still there, but I do like the move because I think he's a guy who has been productive when given the chance, productive lately. He just has to stay healthy. So that leads into some other questions because they re-signed Bryson Tremaine to the practice squad, Mitchell Tinsley to the practice squad, Kaz Allen to the practice squad. They did not re-sign Martavis Bryant to the practice squad. And, and I know we had the good fourth quarter of that preseason game. And in all honesty, and I've said this, it's the fourth quarter of a third preseason game. You're not facing the kind of guys you're going to face during the season. So while he had some nice plays, it's good to put on film, but it wasn't good enough to win a roster spot in the couple weeks he was here. And you have to remember, like, they see what he's doing in practice. They know what he's learning. And I don't think that he had this great game against Miami. Granted, he had just gotten here, so that's a tough one for him. But it was more so like the physical play, getting off press, the blocking, that wasn't there in the Miami game. But anyways, that's why they ended up landing on Noah Brown and not keeping Martavis Bryant around in the practice squad. They did not make any other waiver claims. That's a bit of a surprise, given that they kept saying initial 53. So you anticipated multiple waiver claims. They have the number 2 waiver claim. They will have the number 2 waiver claim for the next until after week 3 of the regular season. Then it reverts to records this year. Until then, these guys have the number 2 waiver claim, so that doesn't go away. But I was surprised by that. And the one thing, you're not picking up Pro Bowlers. And even I think it was Adam Peters told us today, it's a lot harder to get good players now than it is in the offseason. So that's really when you want to add guys that can really help you, that's when you do it. Now you're trying to get guys who can maybe fill a role for you. It's really, really, really hard to find starters at this point. And so, you always have to compare it. Are the guys you're going to claim, do they warrant a roster spot ahead of the guys that you have on the roster now? So, I think this roster still needs work. I don't know that you're going to add somebody that you would say, oh, okay, watch for this guy. So that's part of the thing. And as one thing that Quinn and Peters both said, they're not just here collecting talent. They want to build a team. So that can be two different things, as we saw for many years under Dan Snyder. Sometimes they collect talent. I hear how talented this team is, and they wouldn't be any good because some of those talented guys weren't guys that you really want on your football team, but the owner and the president, Bruce Allen, thought they were worthy of spots. And so they'd give them, but they weren't building a team. They were collecting talent. So there's a difference. And not that you're going to get these big names on the waiver wire now, but bottom line is that's kind of the philosophy. I like the approach because I think over time it wins. I don't know what it means for this year. I don't think you can look at this team and say, like, wow, they're really ready to take off. I don't know. We don't know that. So much depends on what Jaden Daniels does. So much depends on how Cliff Kingsbury uses him. All these questions we still don't know the answers to. And that's something that Logan and I discussed on Monday. So I don't need to go into that in great detail now, but I do think that it's worth pointing out, like, there's still a lot we don't know about how this is all going to come together from the coaching standpoint, the impact of the schemes, all that. Like, we've seen stuff in the preseason. We're not going to deduce too much from that. I mean, I'm telling you, like I've told you before, there were times in 2012 where they go out and play New Orleans. It's like, oh my God, we didn't see that in practice because they're not going to show it. What they know more than anything is one of the things they have to offer that's to their benefit early in the year is the unknown. The teams don't know them. And so I think that makes a difference. So anyways, all that stuff can help them. And then the other thing they did today is they traded John Ridgeway to the New Orleans Saints. They received a 6th-round pick, but they also gave up a 7th-round pick in addition to Ridgeway. Not a surprise. Multiple teams have been calling on him. And we talked about this last night on the live stream. Even after that, I was talking to some people after that. So I kind of anticipated that move today because I didn't think they were going to keep both he and Mathis. And then it created a roster spot that they could then go fill with Noah Brown. So they didn't have to cut anybody after signing Brown. They could just go replace Ridgeway's spot with him. And so there you go. But again, not a surprise in that move. One thing that they did say, again, they had multiple offers for him. So there was a chance to get something for him. I think, there are a couple of teams interested in him at the end, but it's a chance to get at least a little something for him. And then one thing I think it was Peter said that maybe it's a better scheme fit in New Orleans. Like I think that's where you would talk to people. I think they were surprised that Quinn would have kept a guy like Ridgeway and Mathis both on the roster because he typically doesn't get a lot of those big fellas, even though that became a problem in Dallas because they just couldn't stop the run well enough when they needed to. But with Ridgeway, he knew Ridgeway from having coached him in Dallas. I thought Ridgeway had a good last game for for a few quarters. I thought Mathis started to progress over the last couple of weeks. So if he's matured as a player, then he can help them. If not, then they're going to look for someone else. But I think the other thing is you wanted to keep at least one of those guys around because we don't know yet what Johnny Newton's going to be like early in the season. So I think it was important to do that. So they also feel like they said that he has a better chance to play in New Orleans. Ridgeway does. So I think that's good for him.
For the entire month of August, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is offering multiple ways to save on climbing and zip lining and 50% off axe throwing. There are only a few Sundays left without football, so it's time to get that last summer adventure on the schedule. There's no better place to spend the last few days and nights of the summer with friends and family. Don't just take our word for it. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring was named the #1 aerial adventure park in North America by USA Today. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. So there you have it, folks. For the rest of the summer, you can get the best climbing, zip lining, and axe throwing in the country up to 50% off right here in the DMV. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Kime.
Again, I think a big key for Daniels, and when you look at this roster, have they done enough to surround him as we enter the season? This is a roster that needed a lot of work. You clearly knew it wasn't going to happen overnight, but have they done enough to help a young quarterback? And the parts that we don't know, first of all, like I said, I think Zach Ertz is going to be a really good target for him, especially early in the season. And, how the impact of Eckler, the impact of a run game, the impact of Kingsbury's offense, or whatever they're creating here. What's that going to be like for Daniels? Those are the parts we don't know. We can look at the names, we can look at the talent, but the unknowns are all the coaching impacts that we still have yet to see. So you do wonder, does he have enough threats around him? I think that's where McCaffrey has to really kind of continue to progress because he can be a guy who's he's got a higher ceiling because he's just started at this position. I think Zacchaeus has looked really good all summer. So that should help. Crowder is a guy who can roll out of bed and go out and catch a certain number of passes because he just knows how to do it. But I think it was good to add some depth. But again, you need to see McCaffrey really develop because he's a third-round pick. You've got to see that. And I think he can. You saw the size, the way he used it against Miami. And so I think his route running has gotten, the subtleties of it have gotten better. So that will help him as well. And again, physical. So that's going to help. I think the receivers will be much better in the run game overall as blockers. Not that that's their primary role, but it is a very important one. If you want to be a good run team, you better have receivers who can block. So that, I think that helps as well. Then also to the practice squad, Cole Turner back, Chris Rodriguez, somewhat surprised on that because didn't exactly have the greatest summer, but even like last year, I liked him. I felt like he could catch. You just didn't see what you maybe hoped to see this summer, and you weren't sure how does he fit in this offense. But the fact they brought him back is a good sign for him. So he still has something to offer if he gets a chance or if he develops and learns this offense. So anyway, but I've talked a little bit about building the roster, and that's something they talked about today because again, it's like you didn't really do anything. Do you feel comfortable with the roster you have now going into the season? And I'm not sure that you're ever fully comfortable with it. And it's always going to be a fluid thing, especially at the back end of a roster. There aren't any impact guys you're going to add now. And, short of some huge trade, which I don't see happening at this point. So deep breath. But that's where they're at right now with it. So this is going to be a couple-year process to get the roster to where you need. What they need to see this year is, as much as anything, whatever the wins, however many wins this results in, you have to see the identity. You have to build an identity, create that identity, the toughness that you want. I think when you're getting some of the players that they did, that's what helps create an identity, build the foundation, build a level of expectation for this team, and then go from there. And then if you nail number 5, then you're going to be in really good shape. And I'm telling you, like, these players really like what they see from Jaden Daniels. I think it's the maturity they shows. The guy played 55 games in college. That matters, right? That matters a ton. And I think it helps mature a guy, but also, and it gets him a little bit more comfortable in certain situations that these guys see now. So create an identity, get number 5 ready, see what you have in him, because so much of the season is going to rest on what he does and how he develops, how quickly he develops too. And I think some people here think he can develop pretty quick. So that's why I say they're pretty excited. So anyway, really, you know what? And then practice today, not a whole lot to report from. There was a less than 1 hour. It was about 95 degrees. You can probably see I'm still sweating. So, a lot of, just pads come on tomorrow. That's when we see him. For some players like Brandon Coleman, we'll know more tomorrow about what he can do, because I would expect him where he thinks he's going to work tomorrow. He feels good about where he's at health-wise. Now it's just the mental. He's got to get reps. I don't know. I think it's asking a lot to have him go in the opener and play, but that's why you have Cornelius Lucas. That's why you have a veteran guy like him around. Coleman said he's, because it was an upper body injury, he was able to take a lot of mental reps and also walkthroughs and things like that. That helps, but you still need to get in the game and work with the guy next to you. You cannot duplicate that. So at some point, that's going to be the thing. So, but first comes getting comfortable with the offense, et cetera. Then comes working with the guy next to you in a game setting. There you go. So, yeah, tomorrow will be a bigger practice. And one of the things you watch today is just like watching them work on punt returns. I don't know why this kind of interests me, but watching how the way they get them to, they're very big on first cut. I think every special teams coach knows that first cut is important, but I've seen them do more drills emphasizing that first cut. And obviously, Jamison Crowder is the number 1 guy out there. But, guess who else is returning punts today? A couple of them. Terry McLaurin. Take a deep breath. Don't see in the game, but it's just emergency situations, because you never know. I think it's also interesting that when I'm watching these guys, like a lot of the receivers stay up to practice, catch passes. I'm watching Zach Ertz on the side field catch passes out of the jugs, one of the last ones off the field doing that. And then one of the very last guys off the field, maybe the last guy off the field, was the rookie undrafted tight end, Colson Yankoff. I can tell you that he used the word, he kept saying he's stoked to be here. He was stoked to make the team, et cetera. I think he's a guy that you're going to like if he gets a chance to go out there and play, because I just think the way he plays is what you want to see in a player. I don't know how good he's going to be, but he plays tough. He can be smart. But he's out there working today with the tight ends coach after practice, just on little subtle things with the routes and just cleaning up some things, whether it's the, how you're running your routes, just being more clean with it, I guess I would say, and not getting off your path too much, whatever. So, but again, late, I think he was the last guy we talked to, but he was, I think, the last guy off the field.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, the John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Anyway, folks, that's it for me. We're going to wrap it up right there. Again, Friday morning with Brian Mitchell, really good conversation. And then Monday morning with Logan Paulson. And Thursday at 8 o'clock with the Gold members for a private Zoom. Look for the link to be sent. That's it, folks. Talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.